Whoa, almost tripped on the table. Don't worry about me. I feel like Zoidberg over there. Hello, everybody. Welcome out to the Dice Tower. My name is Chris Yi.
And I'm Mike Dilisio.
Today we're taking a look at a game, one of the newest of the jazz trio games that came out here from Bitewing Games. This is Bebop, a musical style I quite like. I don't know if, Mike, you have much, I don't know if you have much affinity for the styles of hard bop and such.
It's okay. I'm not going to lie and say that jazz is my favorite music, but it's certainly not my least favorite. And so, yeah, a little bebop can't hurt anybody.
It's all about the bird. It's all about that, Coltrane and Charlie Parker and them. Anyway, don't worry. That theme's sort of here in this game. This is a tile-laying game, and one that we'll talk about. You can see some clear inspiration from an older design in here, but a tile-laying game in its own right. Let me show you how this one plays, and then we'll give you our thoughts on it. Here's Bebop set up on the table. This is an example of a 3-player game. If it were 4-player, you would also fill in this area of the board with the setup. That looks like this. In a 2-player game, you would not set up these stages here in this area, only using a smaller portion of the map. These are stages where you are trying to listen to those types of music, bands that feature keys or horns or drums. On your turn, you are going to either place out one of these tiles representing a seat, a reserved seat, or on another turn, you can place out one of your dice representing the type of person listening to the music they're hoping to listen to a lot of keys music, for example. So on the white player's turn, they're going to place a tile out here. On the blue player's turn, they're going to choose to place out these dice. And I'm going to explain a few of the reasons why. First off, these are going to be used to try to score the majorities of the stages nearby them. You can also score immediate points by simply connecting, for example, this one here. This is the third red drums connected together, so the blue player would earn 3 points. If later a fourth one were connected to the same family, then that player would score 4 points, so on and so forth. You can also try to have the largest area of the same color, and you indicate that with this little music note here, and that'll be important for end-of-game scoring. These stages are surrounded by 2 types of hexes, either these white outline hexes that are the mandatory spaces, or these ones with the stars, which are not mandatory, but are optional. But players only have 1 seat that can go onto a star space. That's one of the 5 special powers I'll explain here shortly. Once all of the mandatory spaces have been filled in with seats and with dice, you will then score for the majority ownership, or whoever has the most listeners listening to that band. So over here, you'll notice there are 2 blue percussion aficionados owned by the white player, and that is connected in a continuous line of the same color of dice all the way to this stage. And then these ones here are all connected by the same color of dice to this stage as well. So white player has 2, blue player has 2, and the gray player has 1. Whoever has the most listeners will score the full points of that instrument's value over here. In case of a tie, you will divide and split. So 5 points to blue, 5 points to white. And then you will then award this token to the player who has the majority. In this case, since it's a tie, it'll go to the active player, in this case, blue. So that was the blue player's turn. They will then grab an extra die from the lineup display here, or grab a random one from the bag, roll it, and see what kind of instrument they got. We come up here to the gray player, and they can choose to place out a seat, for example, and they'll come over here. The other thing that you can do when you place out a seat is that you can choose to re-roll any one of your dice. So if they don't like this one, they will re-roll it, and now they have a yellow percussion instead of a yellow horn. Comes to the white player. They have 3 seats out there with no dice in it. They're not allowed to place out another seat. They have to place out a die. They're only allowed to have 3 open seats. So they'll place this one over here, draw a replacement, and then it goes to the blue player. You continue playing until players have used up all of their seats, and all of their seats have been filled with dice out there onto the board. The game also has 5 special power tiles, explained here on your player screen, that you can use to hide the dice, as well as a pretty good player reference. So This one over here allows you to place onto a stage that has already been scored. So if this player, the blue player, wants to continue to be able to have space to add red dice and score more points, they can maybe go to what was formerly a stage that's now been listened to. The star, as I explained, can be placed onto one of these star spaces, which do not have to be filled to score a stage, but can be. This one here allows you to place out a second tile in the same turn. This one allows you to immediately fill it in with a die if you want to reserve the space and claim it all at the same time. And this one allows you to boot out another player's piece back to their supply, and so they will have it available. So those are those special powers. Now at the end of the game, as I said, you score points mid-game by connecting lots of the same type of thing. You score points scoring the stages according to these charts down here, earning fewer points as more of the same type of stage has been earned. And lastly, you look at large groups of the same color. So in this case here, if this were the end game state, the blue player had won all of these tokens here, we look and we see this red family. This is the largest red family. Who has the most percussion or drums in this red family? Well, the blue player does. So they will earn 1 point for every percussion token they were able to claim during the game. So they would score 3 points. We look and see they have the most keyboards as well, so they would earn another point because they have majorities in keys. And you're going to do that for all 5 of the family colors of dice out there for all of the tokens of those types. Whoever has the most points at the end of the game is the winner. So the one of the first things that jumps out to me, I do like the theme a lot, and yes, it's mostly an abstract game about kind of surrounding stages and kind of having these majorities there. But the Weberson Santiago artwork I think is great, and it doesn't get in the way of the gameplay. It doesn't get in the way of being able to read the board, I think, very easily. But man, this cover really particularly pops to me.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, just because bebop's not my favorite musical style in the world, or jazz in particular, doesn't mean that I don't have an appreciation for it. It's a theme that is not overused. As you said, this is really an abstract game, but if you're going to have one, why not put a fun theme on it with some beautiful artwork? And I agree that the board is very usable, but still vibrant and bright. Boards, I should say.
The board, that's a good point, right? Because this the regular box, this comes with a double-sided board. I showed off the first-timers board on the front there, which is perfectly adequate to play on repeat plays. There's a back side of the board as well, which, different art style, well, same art style, but different kind of theme to it. But that side of the board is far tighter, far more restrictive, has a lot more empty kind of dead space in it. And then I'll just quickly note that there is also an expansion board you can get that has 2 more maps on it. So a lot of variety that you can play with. I think, honestly, just the 2 board sides in the basic box, there's a good amount to explore there because it's more a game about how the players play off of each other, but the new boards don't hurt.
Yeah, they take those core rules and they basically present you with different types of experiences. So I'm glad that they're there. I agree with you, though. Just those 2 boards that come with the game itself give you plenty of variety.
So this is a game that, when I was playing it, I'm guessing that you might have had the same thought, Mike, that this has a lot of inspiration from a Reiner Knizia game. It's not a surprise as the designer of this game enjoys Reiner Knizia. I would say possibly rivaling you, sir. And Bitewing works in the games of that ilk and that style. This reminds me a lot of Samurai, and I was curious your first thoughts on that, Mike.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's anything that the designer would shy away from, knowing his affinity for Knizia, which is close to mine. I'll give him that. But yes, this very much has a feeling that is reminiscent of Samurai. And if you are going to emulate a game, you could do a lot worse than Samurai. I do feel like this is, certainly distinct enough that it's not like, he just put a jazz theme on Samurai. No. It has very much its own feel and twists, but it's certainly, you could feel the inspiration.
I agree. And so for people who haven't played Samurai, of which I'm sure plenty of people have not, right? I was only introduced to it by happenstance at a game night years ago. I find it to be a very solid, very good tile-laying game. This one kind of takes the twist of a Knizia-esque tile-laying game and kind of splits it into two halves because you have to put out the seats, and that is kind of this whole spatial puzzle. But then also that idea of when do you place your dice out into the board matters a lot because there's a few avenues of scoring, but it doesn't kind of drift into what people proverbially call like, oh, the point salad. Everything you do earns points. Not really. You can have a lot of wasted dice depending on how players kind of cut you off or let you build or grow with you lots of groups of the same color instrument and such. There's a lot of considerations, and so while there's ways to earn points throughout the game just by placing dice and then by scoring stages, there's also all those end game considerations, and it's a pretty tense game, I think.
It is tense, and it's tense because it plays relatively quickly. It's one of those games where you can see pretty clearly what's happening on the board, right? Moves aren't going to really sneak up on you unless you're just not paying attention. Just even some of the design decisions or production decisions, kind of help you with that as in the sense of, when you've got the largest family, you've got a little marker to say, hey, here's the largest yellow family, in case you missed it, type of a thing. And so that tension is built around, again, like you said, not only what you're doing, but what other people are doing. So that's going to create this, especially in a quick game, that feeling of angst, of turn angst, of I really want to try to pull this off. Am I going to get away with it type of a thing? And also, I think that it's very good in the sense that you don't often feel, or I don't often feel like I just got hosed on something, because the way that you get dice, you've got 6 dice that are going to be on public offer, so you can always choose one of them. You can also just pull randomly from the bag. And every time that you place a seat, which is putting out one of the tiles, so to speak, which is, not putting out a die, putting out a seat, you can re-roll one of the dice that you have in front of you. So all of these things make it feel like you have enough agency to try to pull off what you want to pull off.
It's neat because I've seen so many turns in this game where, and they should be lightning fast turns, which is something to say that the rule set is very sleek. And so when you place out one of those seats, you put out a tile, you take a spot that you want, keep someone else from it. You're also doing that to bide your time because you need to re-roll these dice because this group of drums is really growing out there. So you want to jump into that while you can. And then, or do you place out a die now because there's a really good die for you in the, in that face-up market? Like, oh my gosh, I need red trumpets. So, I'm being pulled in lots of different directions in a way that feels satisfying because either way, you're making a good move. You might be giving up the opportunity to do something, but you often feel like I have a lot of good choices. Do I cut someone off? Do I jump into something else? Do I kind of lay claim to a new area that I know everyone's moving towards? So there's a lot to balance with very few rules. And I also love the point you made that everything's visible. As soon as someone makes a move, you go, oh, I know what you're doing. Do I have enough time to cut you off, or do I keep going with what I'm already working on?
Yeah, it's a really clever, a clever game. I mean, that's the word that kind of comes to mind, is that it's a clever game that gets out of its own way rules-wise. I like how the scoring works, where as you're scoring a particular instrument, there are 3 in the game, those point values are going to decrease. And so you kind of see this fluctuating. It's not a market, but it almost feels like one at times, where, it's like, okay, the drums at this point are only scoring me like 5 points. So maybe it's time to move and shift to you know, the brass, because those, you know, those are going to be yielding me higher points. But is that going to play out for me best end game scoring wise? So yeah, lots of kind of contrasting pulling at you on your turns, which again heightens that tension in a pretty short, snappy game. So yeah, I really think there's some clever design decisions here.
So I'm going to move on to the final thoughts and scoring here. For me, man, great production, beautiful art that doesn't get in the way of the clarity of the game and everything. I enjoy this one a lot. I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. I think that for me, the one downside of it is that while it is an incredibly straightforward game, there's two actions. Do one of the two of them. The scoring is a little tricky to explain, especially that end game, the large majorities, the families, times the, you know, whoever has the most of each instrument within that family times the number of tokens you've collected. So much of the game is straightforward, as I think it should be, and tense because of its sleekness. And then trying to reiterate that and trying to make sure that people understand exactly how that's going to shake out at the end of the game has been very tricky. Almost every time I've taught it, someone's gone, oh, okay, now I see how endgame scoring works. Because there's a lot of considerations in that. That's not a huge negative, but it is a thing to keep in mind that the simplicity of this is it's just a little bit bumpy trying to explain that part. That being said, this is one of those games that I would happily say, okay, that was a cool, fun, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, right? The box says, you guys want to run that again? And at that point, then it's going to be very smooth. But yeah, so a tiling game. I like the timing decisions, the two types of actions you take. It all works together very well. I like it a lot. It's an 8 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, this is tough for me because I've been right on the edge between an 8 and an 8.5. I'll just put it out there. I am going to bump that to an 8.5. And my main hesitation is exactly yours, Chris. It's that the scoring is, for everything else being so simple to understand, the scoring is a little bit tricky. I've taken to actually showing a quick example of scoring before, after I've explained the base rules, I kind of will do a little, okay, so this is how, if this was this family, if this was the largest red family, this is how it would score. You shouldn't have to do that, and you don't have to, quite honestly, but if you're playing with a group of kind of hardcore gamers that really want to feel like they know what they're doing and they're not okay with, oh, okay, I get it now, let's run it again, then you might need to do that. But overall, this is a game that just does so many things well. It's so easy, other than the scoring, to teach, to get playing. It has a pretty nice amount of variety to it, and I just appreciate the elegance of the design. So I'm gonna just get it over that hump to the excellence for me, 8.5.
I agree. It's a fantastic game, very fun, and like I said, the music theme, that is always appreciated from me as well. So a high score of an 8.5, giving this one a seal of excellence from us here at the Dice Tower. Thanks for coming out to this review. Let us know your thoughts, of course, below. But until next time, I'm Chris Yi.
I'm Mike Dilisio.
And skip it up,
Puffy cheeks. Nicely done.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another video from the Dice Tower. Hey, you want to learn more about us, communicate with us? We have a Facebook group, we have a Discord channel, lots of different ways to get involved with the Dice Tower. You can find that in our Linktree link below. So just click that, it will take you and you can communicate with us on Facebook, join our Facebook groups. There's lots of cool things that you can find and become part of the Dice Tower. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Vassell.